Isn't it a great day to be a Christian? Open your Bibles to the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. The famous American author Thomas Wolfe once wrote this: "For of all I've ever seen or learned, this book seems to me the noblest, the wisest, and the most powerful expression of man's life upon this earth, and also the highest flower of poetry, eloquence, and truth. I'm not given to dogmatic judgments in the matter of literary creation, but if I had to make one, I would say that Ecclesiastes is the greatest single piece of writing I've ever known, and the wisdom expressed in it the most lasting and profound." Lord willing, tonight's going to be the first of several lessons from the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's begin by reading from the first chapter. Go down and let's start in verse 12. Ecclesiastes 1:12 says, "I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I've seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit." We live in a time when everybody's longing for happiness. Everybody's wanting to be satisfied. Everybody wants things to go their way. The world strives for that in many different ways. Some think they can accumulate or they can gain happiness by accumulating great wealth. And others think that maybe attaining higher degrees and gaining more knowledge will satisfy them. Some seek satisfaction in their work, and they think if they can just get one more promotion, if they can just get to the top of the ladder in their job, that'll make them happy. Others think that it's in seeking pleasure, and so they go out to seek fulfillment of their lust, and yet more and more people in society seem to be filled with disbelief and disillusionment and despair. Some people don't have enough money to make ends meet. Some can't afford to attend college and get that extra degree that they want to have. People are out of work and they're miserable. Some people even think that they'd feel better if other people just had less. We've convinced others in our society, if it weren't for those rich people, we'd all be better off. And so they would be happy if other people would just be more miserable. Today, many people are asking, what's the true meaning of life? Is true happiness really attainable? And it's not a new question. Thousands of years ago, people were asking the same thing. Thousands of years ago, people were looking for satisfaction. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, we have recorded for us one man's answer to the search for pleasure, to the search for happiness, to the search for what's the real meaning of life. Now, the author's name is not really given, but he introduces himself as the preacher, or other English translations say the teacher. The name Ecclesiastes, when we think about that, when we think about the church, the word church comes from the Greek ecclesia, or the called out. And Ecclesiastes is a call. The preacher, the teacher is calling out everybody to listen to him. He's the one saying, y'all need to come out and hear what I've got to say. He's described as the son of David, the king of Jerusalem. That and several other facts in the book make it clear that the author is Solomon, even though it doesn't say that Solomon wrote it. But when it was written, Solomon seems to be an old man. He's reaching the end of his life, and he's philosophizing and reminiscing about his past life. He recalls all of his searches, all of the things he's done to try to find satisfaction and happiness in life. And he expresses his despair in the lack of finding satisfaction, even in good things like wisdom and work. Those are good things, but just seeking that won't necessarily make you happy. So let's go back and start at the beginning of the book of Ecclesiastes, and we'll learn more about this quest that Solomon was leading for meaning in life. Ecclesiastes 1:1, he says, "The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem, vanity of vanity saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Just the second book in, or the second verse in to this book, and he already comes to a conclusion. This life is vanity. Nothing really means anything. There's nothing here worthwhile. And the way he came to that conclusion was because of the confusion that he starts expressing in verse 3. Let's keep reading. What profit hath a man in all his labor which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteneth to the place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about to the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again, according to his circuits. All the rivers run to the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. That which is done is that which shall be done. There is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath already been of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. He said everything just keeps on going the way it has. Sun came up today, it went down, it's going back so it can come up again tomorrow. There's nothing new. It's the same old thing over and over and over again. If we jump ahead to the conclusion of the book, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, the next to the last verse, verse 13, he says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And that was Solomon's answer. That's the alternative to this meaningless life. That's the alternative to a life that's filled with vanity. Seek God's will. Please God. That's really what we're here for anyway. But for Solomon, it seems the answer came too late. He's nearing the end of his life, and he's already made all his poor choices. He's already made all of his mistakes. But it was Solomon's gift to us that he writes down all this information that he gained from living a wasted life so that we don't have to make the same mistakes that Solomon made. And God had it recorded here for us. And the answer is we seek God's wisdom instead of depending on our own wisdom. The Bible tells us that in other places. Proverbs 14:12 says, there's a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Jeremiah 10:23 says, O Lord, I know that the way of man is not in himself. It's not in man that walketh to direct his steps. But Solomon didn't learn that lesson until he made all those mistakes on his own. But he's telling us, listen to me. I'm calling you out. Come and pay attention. I've got something to tell you. Don't do that. Don't live the way I live. So Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes because he finally realized he didn't have all the answers. God did. And he wants us to learn from his mistakes. And Paul tells us that's why the Bible was written. Romans 15:4 says, whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. He wrote in 1 Corinthians 10:11, now all these things happen to them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. And then to young Timothy in 2 Timothy 3:16, he said, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished to all good works. So Ecclesiastes has been given to us to instruct us, to provide for us, to admonish us, to correct us, to help us understand what Solomon did wrong so we can do right, so we can start off following his conclusion. So let's begin tonight by studying just a little bit more about the book's author. Let's talk about Solomon. Upon the death of Solomon, upon the death of his father David, Solomon became king of Israel. And he began his reign with deep reverence, with understanding, with a spirit of humility. And he talked to God. Go to 1 Kings chapter 3. 1 Kings chapter 3. Solomon has just assumed his reign. Let's start reading in verse 7. Solomon says this, and now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. And thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people? Solomon humbled himself. He said, I don't have all the answers, God. I'm young. I don't know all things I need to do. Give me wisdom. Give me guidance. Help me to rule in a way that will please you. And that's how we all should live our lives. Solomon started off that way. And then God, as a result, gave him wisdom. Turn over to the next chapter, 1 Kings chapter 4. And go down to verse 29. It says, and God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding, exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country, and all the wisdom of Egypt, for he was wiser than all men. Solomon got the wisdom. He prayed to God and said, I don't know how to do this. And God gave him the answer. He gave him wisdom. Here's how you do this. And we know that Solomon understood what he needed to do. I say we know he did because Solomon wrote that down. Go to the 72nd Psalm, Psalm 72. This is a psalm that Solomon wrote. So we know he understood how he was supposed to do. Psalm 72, the first verse says, give the king thy judgments, O God, and thy righteousness unto the king's son. He shall judge thy people with righteousness, and thy poor with judgment. The mountains shall bring peace to the people, and the little hills by righteousness. He shall judge the poor of the people. He shall save the children of the needy, and shall break in pieces the oppressor. They shall fear thee as long as the sun and moon endure through all generations. He shall come down like rain upon the mown grass, as showers that water the earth. In his days shall the righteous flourish, and abundance of peace so long as the moon endureth. Solomon said, give me wisdom, God, so I want to reign righteously. I want to be good to the poor. I want to take care of the children. I want to take care of their needs. I want to be your servant. And that's how Solomon started his reign. He knew that the key to being a great king was following God, doing what God wanted to do, trusting on God's judgment, not his own. And he began as a great and humble and powerful and righteous king, and he knew what it meant to rule righteously. But something happened. Solomon lost focus. Solomon strayed away from God. Solomon went into apostasy, and we all know what happened. In Solomon's case, the thing that drew him away from God was women. Solomon had become focused on his wives and his concubines, and the foreign women that he married led him away from God. They came between Solomon and his relationship with the Lord. Go back to 1 Kings. This time, go to 1 Kings chapter 11. First verse. It says, but King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave to these in love. And he had 700 wives and princesses and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abominations of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burn incense and sacrifice unto their gods. Solomon allowed these women to come between him and the Lord. He started building them altars and worshiping their gods along with them. I'll keep on reading, you see what God's response was. Verse 9 says, and the Lord was angry with Solomon because his hurt was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which appeared to him twice. And he commanded him concerning this thing that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Wherefore the Lord said to Solomon, forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant, my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. As wise as he was, Solomon missed his calling. Solomon missed the true meaning of life. Solomon had an opportunity to be happy and fulfilled and live the way God wanted him to live and reign the way God wanted him to reign, but he allowed his desires to come between him and God's will. Now, once Solomon realized that, He called everybody to come learn from his mistakes. He became the preacher who was calling other people to learn. He wanted to tell you, this is all vanity. Don't make the same mistakes I made. The older we get, the more obvious it becomes that we're not going to live forever. Solomon came to this conclusion. I like to think of myself as being middle-aged, and then I remember I don't know any 136-year-old men. Middle passed a while back. If I'm blessed to live as long as Daddy did, that means I got 29 years left to go. And I used to think 29 years is a long time. It's not very long anymore. And the older you get, the more you realize what's important, where our focus needs to be, what we really need to be thinking about. Solomon finally realized that. We can live any way we please until the brush of death makes us reevaluate. Maybe you know somebody that was living a wild life and all of a sudden they had a bad accident or had a bad sickness, and all of a sudden they realized that they weren't going to live forever. They needed to straighten themselves out. One author said this: death is a judge who questions the worthiness of our lives. Death is a litmus test indicating the quality of the way we have lived. Death is a knife that divides the world into the fearful and the unafraid, the remorseful and those at peace, the angry and the accepting, the hopeless and the hopeful. The book of Ecclesiastes was written by a man that's facing death. He's getting on to the end of his life, and he realizes he wants to have hope. He doesn't want to be hopeless. He doesn't want to be helpless, and he's obsessed with death. He's angry at death, and he realizes that everything he's done has been vanity. He's wasted his life, and he wants to make sure that we don't do that. We're all going to die. Once we're gone, there's nothing we can do to undo any of the things we've done on earth. We need to understand what Solomon finally understood. Not sure right now how many lessons we're going to have from the book of Ecclesiastes. Tonight we looked at the prologue, the reason that the book was written. There are at least 5 other sections if we divide the book into sections. Chapter 1, starting in verse 4 through 2:26, is the futility of knowledge and wisdom. Then in chapter 3, we start the uncertainty of life beyond death. Chapter 4, he starts talking about all the oppressions that are done under the sun. Chapter 7, he starts talking about the vanities of life. And then chapter 12 is the conclusion. Or we could just look at it. The book of Ecclesiastes really deals with 3 major questions in life. The first one is, why am I here? What exactly is my role in this world? What's my job supposed to be? What's my purpose? Second great question is, what is the meaning of life? What does my existence matter? How am I supposed to be living? And the third great question is, how can I be happy? Is happiness found in possessions, in people, in accomplishments? Those are the questions that are asked and answered in the book of Ecclesiastes. And in our society today, people are still looking for those same answers that Solomon was talking about thousands of years ago. People think that they can be happy in lots of different ways. They think that they can find fulfillment through sex. And Solomon said that's not the answer. Some think by accumulating more stuff, by earning more degrees, by getting a better job. Solomon says none of those things matter. It's all vanity. The book of Ecclesiastes just kind of dispels all the images of what we think makes people happy, of why we think we're here. I don't want to ruin the entire series, but the message of Ecclesiastes is simple. Without God, life doesn't have any meaning. That's why you need to be a Christian. It's the only life worth living, the only death one would dare to die. If you're not a Christian, you can be added to the Lord's church this evening. If you're already a Christian, are you living for yourself or are you living for the Lord? Are you seeking your pleasure or are you seeking to please God? Why are you living the way you're living? Don't wait until you get in Solomon's shape before you decide that life is vanity. Serving God is the way we need to go. If you need to make a change tonight, won't you do it right now? As we stand together as we sing.